Good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, November 8th, 2010. We're having a meeting of the Committee of the Whole. If you got, everyone, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic that stands one nation, God,
indivisible,
liberty,
and justice for all.
And to make this meeting official, it is Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Gudenkopf. Here. Pezza. Here. Shea. Here. Leader.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Pipskin. Absent. York.
Here.
Nybo.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Morley.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
13 present, 1 absent.
13 present, 1 absent. We have an official quorum. And I will go on to item number 2, which is recognition of the GFOA Budget Presentation Award for the City of Elmhurst 2010-2011 budget. I would ask for our Finance Director, Marilyn Gaston, and the Assistant Director, Tom Trezine, to meet me up to the right at the podium here. Thank you. Thank you, Mike Hughes. While this is a meeting that is primarily for stormwater, we have a kind of a unique situation that we'd like to celebrate. Actually, it's not a unique situation. For the 4th year in a row, our fine city has been awarded this great distinction, which is only awarded to 61 out of 1,298 municipalities throughout the state of Illinois. And I think that's terrific. We basically, the finances of Elmhurst are excellent. We have low debt. We have the 2nd highest credit rating in the world, and it's because of our staff, it's because of our constituents, it's because of the people of Elmhurst, the predecessors that were before me that were very wise with the dollars and made sure that we didn't go in debt at a level that would be, everybody's got a little bit of debt, but we have the lowest debt, one of the lowest debts compared to EAV. Kudos to City Manager Borchert for guiding us and steering the ship, but also kudos to our finance people because they make sure the numbers are right, our budget is balanced, T's are crossed, I's are dotted, and this award is a prime example of that success. So with that, I would like to give this award to our finance people, our director and our assistant director, Marilyn Gaston, and Tom Trezine. Thank you. Marilyn is very humble. Even though she's the director, she gives most of the credit to Tom Trezine, who does a lot of the nuts and bolts work and basically takes our financials and applies them to this organization that does the ratings and gives out these awards. So we thank them for their hard work, and we thank our city manager for his hard work as well, and that's what Elmhurst is all about. So thank you. And now we go on to the meat and potatoes, item number 3 on the agenda, which is our workshop number 3. And first of all, I do apologize. The last workshop, I was not able to be here. I had a very close relative of my father's pass, and I unfortunately could not make it. So I apologize for those that were here, and I was not here. But I guess the second meeting I've missed as a mayor. So, but I'm committed to seeing this project through, and we're in good hands with the staff around me and the elected officials as well. So with that, I turn it over to City Manager Borchert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you've introduced, this is the 3rd of the Christopher Burke prepared PowerPoints identifying the existing situation. Tonight's program is on the sanitary sewer system. We'd earlier reviewed the wastewater treatment plant. 2 weeks ago went over Salt Creek, and tonight is the sanitary sewer system. 2 weeks from tonight will be the storm sewer system, and then after that we will have a PowerPoint presentation yet to be scheduled exactly when, but from Commonwealth Edison on the Commonwealth Edison assessment of their system in the community of Elmhurst and what they've identified they will be doing short-term and long-term in that regard. These PowerPoints, prepared again by Christopher Burke and delivered by city staff, are to provide for a better awareness of the existing situation in Elmhurst relative to systems that deal with flooding. There are basically 3 types of flooding in Elmhurst. All of them are relating to rainfall. The one is sanitary sewer system work, which we'll deal with this evening. When that sanitary sewer system doesn't work, it can back up, and when it backs up, it can cause a problem in a home. The other 2 types of rainfall-related stormwater issues are stormwater that ponds in the street or a neighborhood, in a backyard or a side yard, and that surface water finds its way into a home, causing a problem. And even not in a home causes a problem, as it causes transportation issues, mobility issues that we need to know about, understand, and either accept as an appropriate interruption for the size of storm, or it's not appropriate and we need to improve the infrastructure to deal with it. And then the third is Salt Creek overbank flooding. On the sanitary side and the storm side, you'll hear a little later in the PowerPoint, we're beginning to identify in tighter slices the problem, in identifying the problem in the public infrastructure side and then on the private property side of the occasion. The city, as local government, certainly has, and the state of Illinois and the federal government has rules, regulations. They pass policies that affect both sides of that line, the public side and the private property side. And the Elmhurst City Council is involved locally with identifying local rules and regulations relating to both sides of that line, on the public side and on the private property side. Those are policy issues that we'll be needing to deal with in addition to the engineering. So with that as an introduction, we'll learn about the existing situation relative to the sanitary sewer system, again, as prepared by the Burke consulting firm, but delivered by our city staff. Mr. Hughes, Director of Public Works, will be the lead presenter. He will lean on his Public Works staff if need be, and I will supplement from time to time as well, and certainly provide time at the end for questions and answers. But then, as an overview for tonight's activity, we will ask the task force to sit after the PowerPoint presentation and meet with the mayor and myself and some Public Works staff to identify items going forward for the task force. We would like the City Council to be able to leave reasonably after the PowerPoint and some of the more overriding questions and answers, but to get on with our committee agendas, which are significant for this evening's work for the City Council. So, Mr. Hughes.
Thanks, Tom. As City Manager Borchert said, this is the purpose really is educational. Some of it you may know very well, some may be new to you, so we're just trying to get as much information out there as we can on all of these topics. So again, tonight is the sanitary sewer system. Elmhurst was mostly developed back in the 20s and was originally built with a combined sewer system. That's a system where all the sanitary flow and all the storm flow goes to the same single pipe. It was how things were constructed back then. In the late 1960s, the Clean Water Act came into being, and the real push to clean up streams and waterways started, and it became very obvious that combined sewers were problematic as they carried waste to the streams. The sewer separation that the city went through in 1960s was approximately $9.5 million, which you can see would be significantly more today, in today's dollars, I should say. Here's a picture of a combined sewer system, and the picture on the left shows the system in a normal flow, dry weather condition where all of the sewage from the buildings located in the town are able to be handled by that sewer and all make it to the water treatment plant. But when you get the wet weather and the storm drains and downspouts start kicking in, it's too much flow for the treatment plant to be able to handle, and so there's this is sort of a schematic, but there's an outfall that allows it to go straight to the creek. Again, it says this was the single system was much cheaper to build and probably what drove it in the day. Currently, the city has a sanitary sewer system, which, as it obvious, is the system which carries the sanitary waste away from the homes and buildings, eventually to a treatment plant, to the city's treatment plant. The city has its own municipal treatment plant. In the sketch here, you see the sanitary sewer out in the street. It may be just one point. I'm not sure if I can point on that. This line right here is the sewer lateral. So you'll hear us talk about that. That's the pipe that connects your house to the city sanitary sewer. And in Elmhurst, as in most communities, the city's responsibility for the maintenance ends right at that joint where your lateral comes into the city's main. The pipe from the main back to your house is homeowner's responsibility. Homeowner owns that piece of pipe. I sort of use the analogy of the city has a roadway network, but you got to get your car from the garage out to the street. You have a driveway. That's sort of that connection, similar to this. Here's a couple views of a combined versus separated. The upper right is if you had a combined sewer system, everything that's coming from that house, footing drains, in this case, connected downspouts, as well as all of the wastewater is flowing to the single sewer out in the street. You can see off to the right, though, there's a catch basin there, and as soon as it starts raining, it's going to add all that water as well. On the bottom left is what the city has, which is a separated system. You see two sewers in the street, excuse me, and the sanitary system is taking all the waste from the house, but the clean water, the downspouts have been disconnected. The sump pumps are splashes out onto the yard, but unfortunately, in this case, the foundation drain remains connected. So that foundation drain is down below the ground and it remains connected. General schematic of a sanitary sewer system sort of follows naturally. There's a small service which leaves your house, which goes normally to an 8-inch sewer in the street, which then may go to a larger sewer, which at some point will probably go through a lift station, meaning everything's flowing by gravity in the sanitary sewer system, but at some point it's going to get below the treatment plant and has to be lifted back up so it can continue the journey by gravity. And so in this case, you can see it goes to an interceptor and eventually to the treatment plant. The red line is the corporate borders of Elmhurst, so that's city of Elmhurst, and this is our sanitary sewer system. It's 148 miles of sewer in the system, and there are 9 lift stations which the city owns and operates. This is the locations of the sanitary pump stations, and you can see each of them has a dual power supply, a backup of some sort. Within these, within the city, there are subbasins which drain to these different lift stations. Yeah, this doesn't really identify which one goes to which, but it's broken up such that certain areas will go to the different lift stations, and they all then go to a force main, and the force main lifts it up one more time, and it's usually taken by gravity then to the treatment plant. These are the subbasins in North Elmhurst, and these are the subbasins in South Elmhurst. With the lift stations being so far flung, the city obviously has to keep a pulse on what's going on at each of them. To do that, the city uses what's called a Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System, SCADA, called. The SCADA is located at every lift station and sends data back in a constant stream to the wastewater treatment plant, where an operator is monitoring the screens and looking for problems. Under normal operating conditions, this is what the SCADA will show: the wet well elevation, number of pumps operating, station flow, pump runtime, generator status, intrusion alarm, meaning if the door opens, PLC, which is the logic computer, which is running the whole show, and then set points are when pumps come on and off. It shows what those elevations are. If there's a failure or an alarm at any one of any of those, at any of the stations, it immediately rings back on this screen back at the wastewater treatment plant where the operator is. Here's an example of when pumps are taken out of service for maintenance or whatever. He'll see a screen that shows that they're turned off and that they're X'd out as out of service. Other alarms that will come in is power failure, generator running, high water, and intrusion, so that we know if something isn't quite right at the lift stations. Again, they're all over the city, so this is the only way to monitor them. We're going to focus pretty heavily tonight on inflow and infiltration. Probably by now everyone's heard those terms, but we'll just go through them again. It's a term it's terms that are used to describe clean water or groundwater that gets into the sanitary sewer system. We'll see a little bit later, the sanitary sewer systems are designed to carry sanitary flow, not rainwater. And so obviously, when the clear water gets in, it's a problem. So the sanitary is designed for the toilets, your sinks, your bathtubs, your showers, and the clean water that gets in is problematic for the system capacity. Here's the definition of inflow. It's basically water that is flowing into the sanitary sewer system by a connection. It could be a footing drain, could be a roof drain, could be window wells, and it could certainly be sump pumps. Most of these sources, it's illegal for them to come into to be connected to the system by today's current code. So all of these things could not be draining into the sanitary system if in a house that's built today. Obviously, as the last bullet says, the preferred route is that stormwater is pumped outside and either goes to the storm sewer or gets infiltrated into the ground. Infiltration is water that, basically it's water that comes in through, water that comes in through cracks and leaks in the sanitary sewer pipes. Again, we have 148 miles. Most of that sewer is 6 foot in length to pieces. A lot of it is vitrified clay pipe. Some of it is greater than 50 to 80 years old. So there are cracks, there are open joints, and the water will infiltrate in through those cracks and joints. The bottom bullet there says that often sanitary sewer system pipes, along with the lateral pipes attached to the houses and businesses, have gone much longer without inspection or repair. The city does TV and maintain its sanitary sewers, which we will see, but obviously very few private lines have ever been inspected or checked, so we don't really know what kind of condition they are in, but they're as old as your house, and if your house is pre-1970, there's a good chance it's a clay tile as well. Here's a schematic of sources of infiltration and inflow. I guess starting at the top, you see a roof drain connected. The city doesn't have that problem too much anymore, but here you have a footing drain that is connected directly in, and that is a problem we do have. I would call that inflow, but some of these other sources of broken sewer, and this is that lateral again that we talked about. You could have a broken piece of broken pipe on that. You could have an uncapped clean out, not something we see too often, where your pipe comes into the city sewer. Sometimes that connection will leak. Here you've got just a crack in the city sanitary sewer system. Here's a crack in a manhole. The old lids used to have the big holes in them, just like a regular lid. Now we have what's called concealed pick holes, much smaller. Keeps the vast majority of water out. On the storm side, you see here, it could be a cross connection from a sewer inlet, or even a cross connection from a storm sewer. We look for those constantly. We would love to find those. We're always checking, and we don't. If we find one, we obviously immediately disconnect it, but we don't find very many, unfortunately. So, because that would be a large source of I&I that we could easily remove from the system, but we don't find too many of those. When we get in these situations where we have inflow and infiltration, I&I, I'll call it, it causes us problems at the lift stations, because the lift stations, again, are sized to handle sanitary flow, and now we have a lot of clean water coming in. Here you see, oops, gosh darn it. See right there is the sanitary lift station located on Saylor. It pumps all the way up Saylor to McKinley, and then it's again been lifted, so now it can go by gravity to the treatment plant. When we start getting these heavy, well, in a normal day's flow, when sanitary flow is coming into the wet well, it's kind of like your sump pump, a really huge sump pump. It fills, it fills, it fills, and then it kicks on. Sometimes the pumps keep running if we've got them, if they're timed just right, but that's basically what's going on is all day long, every shower, every dishwasher, every washer, washing machine is going into that wet well, and then the pumps kick on and send it up Saylor to the gravity sewer in McKinley, and then it flows onto the treatment plant. When it starts raining and that infiltration and inflow starts coming in, it comes into that wet well really, really fast. And so at this one, at Jackson and Saylor, we do have a bypass which we can open, and we can pump additional sewage to a storm sewer, which is not an ideal situation, but it's better there than it would be in someone's basement. So we operate that, we send it that way, and that water goes, or that's a 24-inch force main that connects to a sewer on Hillside. So we are able to man that and operate that. We're currently in the process of making those valves that we currently have to open and shut manually will be able to be done remotely. But again, that's what happens when we start getting the rain and we start getting the inflow. This is just something that we put on recently. There was some confusion at Saylor Jackson as to whether the pumps were running or not in different events, actually over time. So we finally decided it might be better to communicate. People were thinking they weren't hearing the pumps, but the pumps at Saylor and Jackson are 20 feet down, and they're submersible pumps in a wet well. And so you don't hear them even if you're standing right there. What people do hear is the generator, which is a large engine, which you will hear. So you'll notice that in this case, it looks like the pump on light is on, but if you were there, you wouldn't really hear anything. This force main goes up to McKinley, and it has been programmed for replacement just for maintenance, and we're currently looking at increasing the size to see if we could pump more out of there on a normal basis. These bypasses that the city has and other cities have are all IEPA permitted. They're they're allowed by the state, but they are monitored. Anytime we activate a bypass, we have to send notification to the IEPA. When did we turn it on? How long did it run? How many gallons? And that type of thing. So these are the bypass locations here. Again, here's a schematic of a connection of a sanitary sewer. Originally, since the combined sewers were both, when the new sewers went in, the separated sewers went in, they laid them as storm sewers because everyone was already tied into the other one. So 95% of the sewers that went in, the old sewer stayed the sanitary, and the new sewer, which was probably concrete pipe, reinforced concrete pipe, became the storm sewer. So in these older homes that were connected, they stayed connected. So you can see here, here again, you have all your sanitary coming in, your toilets and your wash tubs and all that stuff. But you also have a footing drain that is tied in, and so as it starts to rain, you're getting that flow into the sanitary sewer system as well. The city did go through and do a sump pump disconnect program back in the 90s, where every home in town was visited and was required to take their sump pump if it was tied in the sanitary and kick it outside. In addition, we also did, it's not on here, but we also did downspout disconnects, and every downspout in the city was disconnected. I'm surprised when I drive around other towns how many towns I see that still have them. You just go by house after house, it's just right into the ground, and all of that water is going right to their sanitary system and taxing it. So the issue of removing the gravity footing drains has been reviewed in the past, particularly after 1987 storms, but it was deemed that they would be allowed to be granted legal non-conforming status because it's a pretty large project to make that disconnection. You can see it's estimates of $5,000 to $10,000. It requires putting a sump in your house, and it requires revising external plumbing, meaning you have to dig. So it's a big project. For homes constructed within Elmhurst, when you look at the age of homes, homes constructed before 1970 approximately are probably tied to the sanitary system because there was no storm sewers. Between 1970 and 1994, we don't really know for sure which of those they might have been tied to. It was kind of a period there where it wasn't real clear. But we know after 1994, any new home constructed, the sump pump is discharging outside and not tied into the sanitary system.
We'd point out that, first bullet, homes constructed before 70, the sump pump at that time was connected to the sanitary, and the footing drains were most likely connected to the sanitary. Elmhurst has gone backwards and said downspouts have to be disconnected, and sump pumps, if you've got a sump pump, it has to be disconnected from the sanitary sewer. So even if a home was built before 70, if it had a sump pump originally connected to the combined sewer, now the sanitary, that sump pump will have been disconnected. But if there's not a sump pump, if it's just a gravity foundation drain, those gravity foundation drains are still in place and connected to the old combined that's now the sanitary, as noted. And that's clearly the largest source of inflow that's resulting in the problems that we're all experiencing.
All right, thanks, Tom. That's good clarification. Here's a map of those three periods, the pre-1970, the 70 to 94, and then the post-1994 homes in town. I've got the south half coming up next. This is the north half of Elmhurst, obviously, and you can see there's quite a bit of pre-1970, approximately, well, those numbers on the right are for the whole town, so you'll see on the bottom half it's the same numbers, but that's roughly 10,000 pre-1970 homes, which, you know, some large percentage of that is probably got gravity footing drains, and that's where the water's all coming from. That immediately becomes a problem and overtaxes the sewer system, the sanitary system, in a rain event. Sanitary sewer design is generally based on how many people are going to be using that sanitary sewer. So you can see here, they're designed to convey 100 gallons per day per person, and that's basically 100 gallons, what we call a population equivalent. So depending on how many homes you have, it tells you, if you were building a new subdivision, how large your sewer has to be. They're designed to have a velocity that keeps the speed up to help be self-cleaning. They're vitrified clay or plastic, so they have very low coefficients of friction on the inside. So here you see an 8-inch sewer will take approximately 500 homes with 3.5 people per house. So an 8-inch sanitary sewer is a large sewer. It's got plenty of capacity. The problem is when we don't carry only sanitary and we start carrying water, clean water. See here, a half horsepower sump pump with a 1.5 inch discharge line is going to do 60 gallons a minute. And if you do the math, it only takes 7 of these pumps to exceed that 8-inch capacity. So if you have a block with 20 or 30 homes on it and half of them are tied in or somehow, then you got problems. This is, you know, when that water gets into the sanitary sewer system, it puts that sanitary sewer under pressure. It creates what we call a hydraulic gradient. There's a pressure line in that pipe. So if you could take, the science they call it a piezometer, but if you could take a straw and put it in that pipe, you would see how much pressure was in that water. That dirty water would come up that pipe to a certain height. Well, that's the same height it's going up the lateral and up the floor drain into the house. So that pressure in that pipe is what's causing it to go backwards up laterals. And if you don't have an overhead sewer, then this is the situation we end up with, which we had a lot of this summer. The city has taken on numerous projects over the years to reduce the I&I on the public portion of the sanitary sewer system. You know, we did the sump pump disconnect and downspout disconnects, again, back in the late 80s, early 90s. We utilized smoke testing to identify any area drains, and those were removed. We line our sanitary sewers at about $900,000 a year. We've gone through and did a gunite and sealing of all the manholes back in the 90s. They all got new covers. And then we also have, the city also has the overhead sewer program, which is a very effective program because it's doing two things. It's getting the clean water that's coming from that house out of the sanitary sewer system, and it's not allowing the sanitary sewer to back up into that basement. Here's a schematic of an overhead sewer where you can see all of the waste in the house comes into a pit here, is pumped out, and goes to the sanitary sewer. Things in the second floor or higher can just go out by gravity, but everything generated in the basement that's dirty water gets lifted. It's divorced and disconnected from the floor drains, which go to a sump pump, which is splashed out on the ground. That's the basics of an overhead sewer system. This elevation here and the check valve is what protects that flow from coming back up. If this floor drain was connected straight to the sanitary and this goes under pressure, instead of just getting this high, it would have to get up, above the street. So that's where the protection comes from, that combined with a check valve in the overhead sewer protection system. Little history: the overhead sewer system program was created in 1997 with a $3,000 reimbursement. That's been upped recently by the city council to $5,000. We only did 15 prior to 2009. 2009 we did 14. We were budgeting, I think, $15,000 a year. And then in January of May of this year, we did 11, and the city council had increased that budget to $50,000. And then after the June and July events, the city council bumped that up another $450,000. We have almost 100 on the list. 38 have applied for funding. We've processed 12 of those, and then there's another 61 that are going through the process.
Again, this is to differentiate just generally. This is a slide on the City of Elmhurst's shared overhead sewer installation program, where the city pays half the cost, originally not to exceed a total cost of $6,000, half the cost being $3,000, now half the cost not to exceed a $10,000 project cost or a $5,000 city expenditure. The city, since I think it was 1993, clearly has a code that requires overhead sewers to be installed with new homes. So homes built after 1993 have an overhead sewer system, but they were all paid for by the owner of that house, paid for originally by the builder of the house, and then the owner of the house paid for it. So there's a lot of overhead sewers in the city that are protected, but the city's program of financial support is limited to what's shown on that slide. A lot more interest recently than in the past, but a lot of interest even prior to that.
And I actually got an update today on the program, and our average reimbursement right now is $4,100. So that's what we're running at. Another large program that the city does and has been doing for 20 years is sanitary sewer lining. As I said earlier, sanitary sewer pipes are largely vitrified clay pipe, which is the same material that your pot, that orange pot that you have flowers out on your garden. So it does crack, and it is eventually could collapse. Lining is a process by which a bag is blown into a soft bag is blown into the line. It's actually cured in place with water, and then it conforms to the inside of the pipe. You can see the two little boxes on the left is a clay pipe, and on the right is after it's lined. You can't really see it. I have a couple little samples. I can do a little show and tell for the council, but this is what the bag looks like when it goes in. It gets inverted into the line, and then eventually once it's cured, this has got, obviously it's watertight and it's got structural strength, so we're gaining two ways. We're reinforcing the strength of the sewer, and we're eliminating infiltration through the cracks and joints, because this goes from manhole to manhole. So normally you'd have a joint every 4 to 6 feet. You have no joints from manhole to manhole.
And any direct inflow pipe would be identified with that program, because those pipes connected to the main line have to be cut open and if they're not cut open, they're disconnected. So all of the sewers that have been slip lined, the city is quite reasonably sure all inflow connections have been disconnected if they weren't first found and identified and corrected with the smoke testing program.
Yeah, it's a good point, Tom, because normally after that bag goes in, once it's cured, if you've had it happen on your street, you get a notice that says you won't be able to use your toilets for a little while. We actually have to come back and cut out a cookie where when the bag gets pushed in, you can kind of see a little indentation where the bag is pushed against a connection, so they cut that out. But before we even get that far, the line is TV'd. Any potential collapses or partial collapses that would keep the liner from going in are dug up and fixed. That's what we call a point repair. And then the liner goes in, it gets cured, and then when it's all done, the laterals get connected. If we see an extra lateral, is this one live, is this one dead, we do a little investigation on local homes, ask them to flush their toilets, run their sinks, and if no water comes out, well, you know it was probably one that was put in by when the pipe was laid, hoping that the new home would use it and no one could find it again. That one wouldn't get cut out. That one would stay blocked. And then when it's all done, it gets TV'd again. So we know when we leave that project, that pipe has really been, is basically almost as good as new. Here it's a little hard to see, but the red indicates the streets where lining has gone on since 1993. And this is obviously the north part of town. The sewers up in the northeast Elmhurst are all in the backyard, so that was sort of a priority for us because it's really hard to get to them when if there was any kind of problem. But basically, the areas, here's the south half of town, the areas that have been identified and lined were identified either because we knew of structural inadequacies or some time ago the city had done, I think it was in the 90s, a flow monitoring program and identified some of the basins that seemed to have the worst inflow and infiltration. So that's how it's been identified. And again, we do this every year. We've lined 35 miles out of the 148 have currently been lined. Here is an article from 1989. You know, the city has done a lot to reduce I&I on the public side of the infrastructure and continues to do that. In the aftermath of the '87 flood, there was discussions about should we force people to disconnect their driveway footing drains or their driveway drains and their footing drains, and as you can see here, the city council voted to make those legal non-conforming and left those in place. And then in 1989, the city approved $500,000 to repair some of the cross connections that existed between the sanitary and the storm sewer. And at the same meeting, it came up again about disconnecting residential driveway drains, which are those downslope driveways, which obviously is clean water coming right into the sanitary system. Again, it was decided that they were going to be grandfathered in, so it wasn't removed at the time. So we've got a combination of public-private infrastructure makes up the whole sanitary sewer system. The big problem is I&I, and the city's made big strides on improving or reducing I&I on the public side, and how we best do that going forward on the private side is something that we expect would be analyzed and alternatives put forward coming out of the comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Director Hughes. And appreciate your education and sanitary, the sanitary system. Not the fun system, but it is what it is, right? So, any questions or discussion? Alderman Mulliner.
Excellent job, but I have a whole series of questions. So let's start. I probably got about 10 or 15 questions I kind of want to go through. Slide 5, you talked about. We've talked about this a number of times. The connections with the foundation drains, indicating that there's a significant percent of the water that goes into the sanitary sewers from that. Do we have any idea what percent of water goes into that? And then the other question is, those foundation drains, I'm assuming those are the traditional foundation tiles. Are all of those still intact, or have most of those collapsed?
Well,
Is there any way to know that?
well, if you're having problems, if you're having real seepage problems, you may have a collapse. If you're not having problems, it's probably still working. Those tiles that are laid generally were laid in some stone bed, so even if a pipe is collapsed or broken, the water may still be able to move through the stone and get out eventually. But if you have a full collapse, you might notice that one corner of your house or something, you're having water problems. Relative to the percentage, we don't know the exact percentage, but we've done rough calculations, and we believe that there's probably as many miles of footing drain around homes as there is total sanitary sewer system, probably 150 miles of footing drains around homes. And again, when you're talking infiltration, that's coming into cracks and things like this. This is a footing drain is a perforated tile intended to take water, to be a zero pressure zone to take water, placed in a drain field, so it's a much more efficient system.
So if you're looking for one of the solutions is to disconnect these and connect them to the other sewer system. Would be a logical thing to do in order to eliminate a lot of the water that's going into the system.
Correct.
On slide 8, this goes to the pumping stations. How often are those backup generators run? Okay. The diesel fuel, I assume, is changed out periodically or run to the point where it's run down? What about the one that's at Master Car? Do we maintain that? I know it's maintained by them, but do we actually check to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to with that one, or do we just assume that they're doing it?
I think that's totally theirs, but it also only services their campus.
Okay, so
So if they don't do it right, they have the problem.
that's their problem, it's not ours. Okay.
It used to be the city's prior to Romans Road being vacated and all that, but once they
Okay.
took over everything, they got that too.
Okay. You've got a couple of them that are indicated here with portable generators. Plans to upgrade those or put regular generators at each one of those? Do you have any long-term plans to replace the generators at those?
I don't believe we have any plans right now, but again, could be something looked at in the comprehensive plan going forward.
Are those in any of the areas where we've had issues with flooding?
I don't think so. And of course, that it also depends on the reliability of ComEd in the area. If you've got good reliability, then the generators are less important.
Okay. Slide 13, one of the comments that you made there was that when the pumps are out of service, the SCADA system shows the X's on the boxes. I'm curious as to when you do the maintenance on them, I'm assuming that you don't take all of the pumps out at one of the lift stations at one time. You only take one at a time out.
It would be sequenced depending on what had to happen, right?
Okay. Are all the lift stations, are they similar to the one lift station that we've talked a lot about where they have 4 pumps in them, or is each one slightly different?
I would say each one's slightly different. They're different sizes for the amount of flow that's coming into them and how far they're pumping it, how high they're pumping it, so they're all different.
Okay. On slide 17, one of the comments that you made was that there's a number of these, or a few of these crossovers between the storm sewer system and the sanitary sewer system, and you said when you find them, we take them out. We don't know where any of the remaining ones are. We're just finding them as we go along.
Well, that's what I was saying. We haven't really found any. We always hope, we would almost like to find them because then, you got a real source of inflow. But over the years, they've been bumped into. The sewers have been TV'd. As Tom said, when we TV'd a sanitary sewer, we see every pipe coming into it, and we've done 35 miles, and I don't know that we've bumped into hardly any.
Yeah, and initially, after the sewers were separated, the city went through a program of, before my time in this capacity, and even in public works, but as an engineer, the city was smoke testing the entire sanitary sewer system, checking for any downspouts that were still connected from houses, and then checking and seeing any smoke coming out of a stormwater inlet curb connection at the street, that indicated that that inlet was connected to the sanitary, or the downspout was still connected to the sanitary, and then that appropriate disconnection was made, be it on the private property side of a downspout or any direct drain connected to the sanitary. So there may be a few connections still out there, but they've gone undetected with the smoke testing and undetected with the sewer inspections and undetected. We know they're not there where the sewers have been lined, because the only holes that have been opened are for sanitary connections.
Thank you. Slide 21. I'm just kind of working my way through all these questions that I have. This one talks about the bypass locations, and it talks about the size of the diameter of the bypass going into the receiving sewer. When these bypasses are in use, does the force of the water coming from the bypass, how much of an impact does that have on the storm sewer system? I mean, what I'm looking for is, the way I describe it is, does that create a water dam to some degree? Does that back up the gravity feed of the storm sewer so that the water backs up onto the streets?
Hard to say exactly, but if you take what happened, say July 23rd, it was pumping down to Harrison, which was already underwater. So was it making it worse? Could you measure how much higher it would have been, it wouldn't have been, how much lower it would have been without that? It's hard to say, but all of that water was potentially heading to basements. So as bad as that is, it's not as bad as the other choice. So it taxes the storm sewer, you know, if in a more normal situation. But again, it's in all of these cases where we're trying to get sanitary and storm separated. You know, if you take it out of it's better to take it out of the sanitary, even though you may have a negative impact on the storm.
Okay. So we're back to the I&I issue is what we're back to. We got to get the water out of the sanitary sewer system. One of the other questions I have relates to going back to what we just saw. You just passed around the sewer lining, you know, and I ask this question all the time. Because I think that this is one of the things that we keep missing. I think the drains around the basements are probably one of the issues, but I still think that the laterals are another big issue. I think that there's a lot of houses out there that have the old clay, and they're collapsing, or they have roots going in them. I'm sure that most people who have a house in town can tell you how many times they've had their sewer rotted out to make sure that they get it cleaned out, and it's primarily roots that are going into it. Do we have any idea what it would cost to have something like this lining done? And would it be beneficial to us to, as we've got the overhead sewer program set in place, do a similar type program to have the sewer, to allow homeowners to have the sewers lined with something like this that would solve that problem? That would, especially now that I see it, and I see how sturdy it is. I mean, to me, it seems to me as if it would make some more sense to do that. If we can do that and it's much more cost effective, that may be a better way to get more of the water out of the sanitary sewer system.
Yeah, we figure we've probably got upwards of 100 miles of lateral, you know, in addition to the footing drains. So you're right, it's a lot of pipe that is got cracks and open joints. So I don't have a number. I apologize. I don't have a number for what it would cost to line one, but the systems do exist, can be done. I know certain sanitary districts have started programs to line sewer laterals.
Can we get a number for that so we can see? Because I think to me that's a way that maybe we can get some of that water out of there, and it may be a more cost effective if we can do a shared program with the homeowners. Sure. You know, when they're having their sewer rotted out, maybe we can have a program that allows them to get it lined.
Sure, definitely.
Thank you. That's it. That's all my questions for right now.
All right. One other question before I go to any of the other aldermen. On some of the streets, we actually had manhole covers lifted. I would assume that's the charge of the sanitary, where it actually was that powerful, it actually blew the manhole cover off, and sanitary water, along with storm water, basically went into the street. Is that
correct?
Is that those situations?
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to double check, because we had several of the streets, or I know we had people say we had manhole covers were actually floating. So just so everybody has an idea, you know, the manhole covers have just a little hole, and then catch basin on the side goes into the storm sewer. But when the covers come off, that typically indicates a charge in the sanitary. So,
correct.
Any other questions, discussion? Alderman Brown.
Thank you. Just one question that dovetail off of Alderman Mulliner's question. I thought that we have two pieces to what we call the overhead sewer program, one of which covers the lateral in the budget book. And I don't have my budget book with me, but I thought there was two pieces to the overhead sewer program, and one is part lateral and one is the actual installation of the overhead sewer. Is that a correct assessment?
Director Hughes?
Yeah, there's another program the city has called the Sanitary Sewer Protection. But basically what is, the city will pay up to 50%, up to $2,000 for any portion, any repair you do on the sanitary sewer lateral within the right-of-way. So it is a totally separate program, and it does help reduce I&I, but a lot of it is really to help work with the homeowners to prevent tree roots from blocking their sewer. So if they replace that in a plastic fashion, there's a reimbursement.
Right, I just wanted to kind of dovetail off of that because I thought that was that we had at least something in place for the laterals. My one question really is on slide 33, and not particularly about that slide, but the sanitary sewer lining. Obviously, the northeast section has already been completed, and other sections within town have also been completed. Do we have any data prior to and then after the lining has been done for each of those impacted sanitary lift stations to see how much this lining has helped any potential I&I? Because from what I believe, the sewer lining at a bare minimum resolves at least all the infiltration from the sewer itself and then some of the inflow. So do we have any of that statistics?
You know, I don't know off the top of my head. I can check with our staff out there. Obviously, you know, Dennis, I know Dennis did checking beforehand, but now that we really just completed that whole Northeast Elmhurst last year, maybe 2 years ago, 06. So we probably could, if it hasn't been done, we probably could run that again.
I think some of those facts, I mean, not only the northeast section, but any of the areas that have been completed and those impacted lift stations, it would be interesting to see on what the flow is at those lift stations before and after the fact.
The only problem with that is that it's storm dependent.
Yeah, understood.
If you had the same storm before and after, it'd be easier to check, but we can certainly do some looking.
Very good. Any other questions, discussion? Anybody? Okay. Very good. Nope.
Just one quick question for Mike.
Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. On slide 8, Mike, real quick, you have the pump stations and the backup power. For each of those stations, how many of those do we have multiple electrical feeds for? I know Saylor and Jackson, we have 2 electrical feeds. We had an east and a west, and both those got knocked out in the June.
Those are on the storm pumping stations.
Those are just
Jackson
on
and
the
Harrison, those have 2 feeds each, but those are storm pumping stations.
Okay, so on the sanitary, there's a single feed.
Right.
Okay, and then the backup.
Correct.
Okay.
Very good. Any other questions? Okay. Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, we had a unique situation where we have one of our aldermen who was elected to state representative, and Alderman Nybo has put his resignation in for our council. This is actually his last meeting, and it's been a privilege and an honor to serve with Alderman Nybo, and we wish him the best. And he's going to be a great voice for Elmhurst down in Springfield. God knows we need the help down there. And Alderman Nybo wanted to say a few words, so Alderman Nybo.
Again, there's no questions from the task force, though, first, before? No questions at all? Did you want to have any task force questions?
Well,
Do that afterwards.
pardon me? Yeah, we are going to meet with the task force after this, so I would encourage, if we have questions, City Manager Borchardt and myself will meet with the task force to kind of talk about expectations and what's going to be happening over the next month or so, and also what's going to happen after the first of the year as well, too. So if you do have specific questions, we can address those at that time, if that's okay.
Okay.
And this way we can get the committees going and also see a fine man off and
Well, thank you. I didn't want to take up too much time, Mr. Mayor, because I know we're busy tonight. And I guess, after tonight, my resignation will be effective. And I suppose my timing could have been better, at the risk of someone saying that after 3.5 years of working with everybody up here, we ended up in the sewer. And I'll also reserve, everybody can insert their own appropriate joke about the state of Illinois. But in all seriousness, I am very excited to move on, and I wanted to spend some very important couple months working on two very important initiatives. The first being the creation of an e-newsletter for the residents of the 41st District, and so I'm really going to try to promote and publicize that over the next couple months, and also the creation of an advisory council. So if I can, if anybody is interested in signing up for the newsletter or for the advisory council, they can contact me at 630-941-9228, or they can send me an email at chris.nybo@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to have anybody involved. But most importantly, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank not only the residents of the 5th Ward, who I've had the great honor of representing for the last 3.5 years, and who I'll also have the honor of continuing to represent, but I wanted to thank all the residents of Elmhurst and all of our staff and all of my colleagues up here on the dais and those who I've served with in prior years. Much like the York Dukes cross-country team, it's great to go out a winner. And I feel I'm going out a winner not because of what happened last Tuesday, because as we all know, it would be inappropriate to comment on electoral politics, but because of what we've accomplished as a council over the last 3.5 years. I'm very proud of everything that we've done. It's been a true team effort, and I've learned from each and every one of you, and so I just want to let you know how much I've enjoyed working with you. And you, Mayor DeCiani, in particular. It may surprise some people how well you and I have worked together and how good of friends we've become. But I think for those people who know us very well, it's not a surprise at all, because I think that's the kind of people that you and I are. And I knew that from the first time I met you. And I wish you the very best. I've been happy to serve with you. And keep up the good work, all of you. You guys are going to do a great job. Thanks.
Very well done, and it's an exciting time for Elmhurst. I think we've got some great representation throughout Springfield now, as well as even at the county level. You've done an excellent job, and hats off, and we're wishing you the best. So we're always here, and we'll have again a nice voice down there. We've got a lot of things that we need to get done, and it's nice to know we've got somebody representing Elmhurst, and will be our voice. So with this happening, many people have asked me what's going to be the process. We will be doing an appointment for Alderman Nybo's seat, which is the 5th Ward seat. I have people who have reached out to me prior to this, knowing that this would be coming up. But I would like to open this up to the public, and over the next week or two, if people could get me, if they're interested in possibly being appointed to the 5th Ward, get me their resume, and you can get that directly to the mayor's office, 630-530-3013, or you can email me. My email is right on the city website, and we'll be entertaining resumes, and the appointment will be confirmed by the council, and I would hope to have that appointment made either by the end of November, beginning of December. So people are asking how that's going to work. I just wanted to let folks know that we are opening that up. But already 5 people have approached me, so we've got definitely people that want to serve in this community. I think that's great. 2 of those people were already on the finance task force. They're up to speed on our budget issues and a variety of different things that we've got going on. So done a great job, Alderman Nybo, and I should say Representative Nybo, and pretty soon. And so it's nice to know that we've got people willing to serve, and there's a lot of work to do, a lot of sleeves to roll up, and fortunately we've got people ready, willing, that are able to do this. So, but that'll be the process. So please get the calls in, get the resumes in. We want to have the best up here, and we will have the best. And I appreciate everyone's time and their willingness to be a committed part of our Elmhurst process. Just like our task force, we've got people that are willing to dig in and solve our problems. So, with that, any other questions, or Alderman Morley? Motion to adjourn. Second by Alderman Healy. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? We're adjourned.